So thank you again for everybody taking the time to be here today, and thank you, Leif, for introducing me and welcoming me to be here. Despite the IBM t-shirt, I don't actually work for IBM, but my relationship with IBM has been so close over the years that the reason for the IBM champion bit is that myself and about 25 people around the world are recognized as these champions for the Rational brand. And our relationship is because we've been doing so much with Rational, we kind of feel like we're more rational than most of their employees. But we also are good advocates, and we also like to try and explain to people how best to get value out of those Rational solutions. Obviously, my field is been a bit about Agile. Agile has been a buzzword now for a number of years, but for those of us been working in some of that legacy in Rational, things like the Rational Unified Process, or RUC, as it's often called here, it's often been recognized that in the days of RUC, if you're doing it right, you were probably quite agile to start with. But now we've got to learn about what it really can mean for an organization. So an agenda, I'm not going to run through the points on here, but my message from this slide is that this is part one of a two-piece presentation. I'll be back in here later this morning talking more about the team and how you make individual teams successful. But this piece is about how do we make an enterprise enable those teams to be a success in the use of Agile practices and deliver all those benefits that everybody seems to expect when we talk about Agile. I'm also going to conclude with a few minutes at the end here to talk about communities. You have a community by default being here. You're part of a Rational community. And I want to explain to you the opportunities that exist about being part of a global community of people and what that can bring for you. But back to the main topic at hand. Okay, everybody wants to be Agile. I don't know anybody out there who says, you ask an audience, are you Agile? They're not going to say no. It's going to be a bit of a suicide moment if you were in your software development career. Everybody wants to be Agile, and why? Well, obviously everybody wants better results. Hopefully they're looking for things like predictability. Maybe they're also looking to be able to get shortened time to value, get solutions out, get value back to clients, make sure we're maximizing that return on investment. But also we live in a world of rapidly changing needs. If you deliver to your business or to clients, and maybe a few years ago, their requirement set would last and be valid for 6 to 12 months for a number of years. These days, requirement sets remain valid for only a few months at a time, maybe only a few weeks at a time. That means that we, as delivery organizations or delivery teams, have to ensure that we deliver those results back to them in a time frame that maximizes return on that investment and keeps those needs valid. We also need to make sure we maintain that high quality, of course, and there are a lot of myths around Agile being a bit slapdash, a bit kind of chaotic, about those developers being left in a room and there's all chaos in there. No, not at all. We're talking about very high levels of discipline, and with discipline we're looking to make sure we not only maintain quality but also improve the quality of everything that comes out of our teams. So that's all the reasons why everybody wants to be Agile. But then the biggest challenge we then find is that everybody wants it, but they're not quite sure how they're going to get it. And it will require quite significant levels of change in your teams, in your organizations, and also in the business that works with those teams. I often say to those businesses that are trying to demand their IT organization to be Agile, this is an opportunity that they can help you realize, but as a business you need to take that opportunity. It's not all about the IT, it's about the relationship and about how you work with IT to get those results. And that requires some change inside business. It also requires change within organizations too that are doing the delivery. You're going to need to look at how you structure your teams, how you staff those teams, how you actually support those teams to be a success. One of the biggest challenges I find is people talk about they want to have a new enterprise Agile or an Agile enterprise. To be honest, I think we should focus on making the teams Agile, but then the enterprise needs to be supportive of that style of working. So really, you've got to think about an organization that is transforming its ability to support that Agile activity and not be obstructive and not block it, not have all these lead times for announcements as we heard about that really just don't allow them to realize the value they can provide. There will be a lot of culture change in that. And there will also be a lot of, if you are working in a commercial environment where you're delivering solutions, or you have those internal contractual agreements, those are going to have to change as well. Of course, the ways of working for Agile teams, that's kind of obvious. So, stepping back a bit, Agile, some truths, some hard truths. Not a lot of people want to hear this, particularly those who may be a bit of a scrumdimentalist, as I've heard being used as a phrase before now. You know, a bit of a radical out there. Agile is a movement, certainly, and there's a lot of weight behind that movement, and a lot of valid weight behind that movement. But sometimes I think it's very narrow, a lot of the conversation that's being had about what Agile can do. Yes, there's some fantastic management theory. There's a lot of fantastic techniques and philosophy in there to ensure teams work effectively and collectively. It's also highly empirical. As in, you get real results. You can see real results. You've got real measures coming out of what the teams are doing. One of the challenges can be that it's a bit simplistic and pure in a lot of the descriptions that are out there. They don't deal with the complexity that most organizations have. And sometimes it can be a little too idealistic as well. You know, idealism around the fact that you'll get the business representative sat with you all day, every day, talking about what you're trying to do. How many people here genuinely get the business people engaged that well in what's going on in the IT department? Probably a little idealistic for most of us. So a bit of a busy slide, and I must say I'm borrowing quite a few things here that you'll find not only in the great Agile for Dummies book that you'll see around the place. I've been lucky enough to do a lot of work with Scott Ambler and more recently with Matt Litzer. But this picture's come from a lot of the work that Scott's done in originating disciplined Agile delivery. And what it tries to say is there's many factors you need to consider when you're trying to understand how Agile will work in your organization. You need to understand these things on the left here, such as what kind of skills have we got in our organization? Are we actually capable of just getting going with Agile? What kind of culture we got? Are we used to working collaboratively? Are we always measured to achieve individually? Are we rigid in how we structure ourselves? Do we insist on certain groups sitting in one place and never getting the chance to collaborate with each other? And do we truly understand the nature of our problem in so much that do we even have the opportunity to get shortened time to value of the things that we're producing? Lots of factors in there, and then that may be the environment, but also we need to make sure we understand things like the size of our teams. You know, how many organizations truly run projects with less than 9 people involved in total? Now, that's not really going to happen. You're going to have far more than that. How do we deal with those things? More and more, we're finding that we've got distribution in our teams, even if some of it's a little crazy distribution, like forcing people to sit in rooms separated by a single partition wall that could easily be removed. But some of the more common distribution, of course, is around the global distribution. I spent earlier this week with a nearshore center in Poland, but I'm also next week in India, and the distributions and the cultural differences are, of course, pretty big. Do we have to deal with compliance? Do we have to manage a very complex domain? You know, air traffic control, pharmaceutical, regulatory compliance, all very big factors we have to be able to work with. And also, how technically complex is this solution we're working with? You know, do we have to be dependent upon other systems out there, or, you know, unlikely that we'll be able to have complete control over everything we're working on? All factors we need to be able to work with. And a lot of books and good work has gone on to make sure that these problems are understood and that we've got clear, good strategies for how to deal with it. No single method has the answer to all these things. There are a lot of people say they do a single method. But the reality is you need to be able to look at a hybrid selection of choices. There's a good work was done by a friend of mine called Mark Canale in this SDLC3. It's a little academic as a book, but it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. If you really want to understand why Agile practices and techniques work in an organization, particularly if you've got a good engineering background, because, whoa, does he get into the engineering side of the mathematics here? But it's a great book that really exposes what are the origins of all those things that we call good practice in our industry. And in that book, he tried to map it all together and give some examples of how there is a lot of commonality going on in what's really worked in our industry, whether we call it Agile or whether we've got different sources of that being a success. But recognizing that kind of work, two of the most popular frameworks that exist today, it recognized that we need to bring together what works into a framework of practices that allows us to pick and choose the right things, depending on all those factors that I just showed you earlier. Dean Leffingwell, actually he's got a bit of history in the world of Rational and IBM too, but Dean's scaled agile framework, very good at looking from a program level down as to how to drive the results of many agile teams aligning to the enterprise and giving you the ability to coordinate and bring together the efforts of many teams to deliver within an enterprise environment. But disciplined agile delivery you see here, Scott Ambler and Mark Lyons, their work is more of a focus on how are you taking it from the team through the organization. Really about how do you build upon the foundations of simple methods to be able to collate them together and bring in the scaling of practices and the selection of the right practices to be a success. This work here that's driven by a book is becoming a process decision framework. And what's very nice about the work that they've done with Disciplined Agile Delivery, if you go to disciplinedagiledelivery.com, is that all of their latest work is just being continuously shared. It's good agile publication, to be honest, constantly revising and constantly producing the next part of an ongoing story that continuously meets the latest challenges and needs. I don't know if everybody knows here, but the story of Charles Dickens and his publications, he was exactly the same. Charles Dickens was probably one of the first best agile authors out there. He didn't publish a whole book up front. He published it week by week or month by month in newspapers and publications. And he used to get reaction based on what people thought about the trend of the story and exactly what the story should say in the next chapter, in the next episode. And so he developed his stories and his books in an agile manner, reacting to the trends of his feedback, of his readership. Interesting, isn't it? And we publish books now in one big hit. Well, okay, Mark and Scott did a great job of the first version, but their evolution of their story and their guidance is constantly growing on that website. And it's a great way of being able to keep up with the latest trends. So we've got to get to scale. We want to really achieve scale. And basic agile development down here, it's great. It gives you all that value-driven, quick to value, team collaboration, self-organization, all those classic stuff you expect. That's a great foundation. Methods like Scrum, XP, etc., they do that. They provide you with that. But there is a big difference between operating in a very purist, simple environment to the enterprise. The enterprise where there are a lot of challenges, a lot of risk, a lot of integration, challenges that need to be addressed early in the life of the project. We also can't afford to evolve to somewhere over time. We need to have a strategic plan. We need to know where we're headed for and have a good understanding how we need to change our path to make sure we get there. This means we need to make sure we have a life cycle that's driven not only by value, but also by risk. Those of you, again, familiar with the Rational Unified process might remember that as a key tenet of that life cycle. But reintroducing that in an agile context gives us that ability to be both strategic and give ourselves more predictability and the chance to integrate with other timelines and dependencies more effectively. We also want to make sure there's relevant governance too. If you've got multiple sets of teams, they need to be aligned. There needs to be some steering, some strategy to keep those things aligned together. There's been a lot of talk about individual teams as long as they're all being productive, they can operate in the way that they feel suitable. Yeah, it might work for a while, but it's not a very long-term sustainable approach. You really do need some consistency across those teams. That's not to enforce process. That's just to give them strategic guidance and direction about how we work together in a common way. As we go through that disciplined approach that allows you to be connected to the enterprise, then you start to take in the other complexity factors, plus also we need to start thinking about one of the biggest and you talk about crossing the chasm in an adoption process for an organization or in an industry. The chasm for me really starts to demonstrate itself. We've got the teams and the people, that's working well. We've got the tools in, that's kind of working well. And then the big first chasm is when we look at delivery assurance and governance. and how our organization tries to manage what we typically do. Transforming that is going to be your big challenge. Making sure that you're measuring in a way that doesn't influence behavior, of course. If you measure people in a certain way, they'll behave in that certain way. You've got to start looking at the measures that will really help Agile teams. So simple teams and simple roles are not what we're going to find in our organizations. We're going to need to recognize that more roles than the basic Scrum of them, Scrum Master, the product owner, and members of a team are going to be required. This is a picture from Disciplined Agile Delivery, and it talks about you've got simple teams, but you're also going to need a supporting cast of people around them. Those people aren't going to be able to operate with scale and have all the services they need provided by themselves. They are going to have to recognize those teams need that support network around them. Something I will talk more about when I do my second session today is this notion of an agile team lead, which is a bit heretical for some. I might get pulled off a stage and mobbed if I would say that at a Scrum session, Scrum meeting, the fact you have team leaders in Agile. But I'm going to talk more about that when we come to the second session today, to how to make teams effective themselves. Not everybody's got the maturity to know exactly what to do on their own. And so one of the biggest challenges I face, and I was chatting with Elizabeth down here earlier today about some of the biggest challenges I work with, and I know this is a rational conference and there'll be a lot of talk about tools, but my big focus is the people and getting them aligned to their new roles in an organization. And trying to recognize that, okay, if I've stepped into this environment and I've only ever played a test role, what's the future for me? And so this little picture tries to show that there is a place for anybody who's been in a maybe siloed role to play a part in this new Agile world. Here you can see the tester has an opportunity to be a member of the team and collaborate and really be constructively helping to make sure that the team constantly delivers value. But likewise, we've also got the opportunity to be the extra safety net. The safety net that helps us bring everything together for multiple teams and perform that classic testing role, which is still required in an Agile environment. So how do we structure a big team? Well, small teams, simple. They've all got a common goal. They're working towards it, and they keep driving in that direction. 7 plus or minus 2. Sorry if I've offended some people of a certain Scrum religion. 6 plus or minus 3 might be your thing, but less than 10 certainly. I get tired of these debates. But then, the classic is Scrum and Scrums. You get a few teams together, they collaborate through a stand-up meeting between the teams, and they coordinate and communicate what they're trying to do. It scales to a point, not a very large point, but it scales to a point. But then you get to the next idea of, okay, well, if we're getting bigger, maybe we need some kind of coordination, governance, and provision of strategy and service for all of those teams. And that bit there in the middle, that's actually quite difficult. That's quite complicated. And I think that picture really oversimplifies what you're really trying to achieve. So maybe, and this is actually an example I've developed with my good friends at Capgemini, who are out there actually. You've obviously, in any large endeavor, needs to have a common vision of what we're trying to achieve. Pretty important. Actually, one of the biggest challenges I typically face with clients is that they start these Agile projects and everybody seems to have a completely different view of what they're trying to achieve. So get that in place. But then you've got a team, and they're going to set in place the foundation for how this organization will work as they go forward. Obviously, don't start day one with 150 people. Nice team to get things started. And here you might notice that I've talked about feature teams, delivering results of value in their total, not just delivering an architectural component. We're looking to deliver a set of value here. They can touch everything required to be able to deliver what's needed by the business. But here we've also extended to have a number of teams, and they're all working to this common vision, and they all have their own role set to be able to deliver value independently. And so they really are kind of creating a common endeavor, a common project that they're working towards. But how's that coordinated? How are we actually going to make sure these teams are effective? In isolation, everybody's having to do everything required of them. Well, there are going to be some services they all need. Absolutely. Over here, we've got these guys who are implementing the continuous integration, the DevOps facilities, services that all of those teams are going to need. And the more consistent it is for them, the easier it's going to be to integrate all of their activity. And also the more they can focus on delivering value as opposed to the technical bureaucracy that goes on in any software development project. So we've got this team providing services to one side. Equally, and this might look scary for people who think, oh, this doesn't look very agile and simple. But equally on the left here, we've got a group of people who are providing that direction, that common direction, structure, and governance to what we're trying to achieve. For example, all those teams in the middle there need their own sprint backlog, which needs to come from some common backlog that needs to be divided, cut, fed, just-in-time information, driving them all in the right common way, but giving them all individual tasks and goals to achieve in parallel. That's not very easy. That takes a lot of time and effort and requires this strategic group over here to be providing that kind of feed and direction to keep them all in line. It's not a management team, it's a governance and a strategy team. Hence why we put them on the sides, not above, like you might consider a hierarchy. But also it's very important that, yes, we've got tests in every team, but there's a lot of integration going to be going on and a real need to be able to consolidate this work on a regular basis. Independent testing team, giving that regular insight into overall progress and recognition that we need to connect out to the enterprise. The enterprise architecture links need to be there. A simplified model looks like there's lots of people, but it could be that people at the center are also playing some of those roles to the side as well. Just recognition of the need for those roles. Okay, so distribution. Great book written by Elizabeth over here, plug it. large distributed teams with Scrum or something like that, I can't remember. But Elizabeth Woodward, if you look that up, you'll definitely find it. But distributed agile teams at scale. Got to get that common culture going. You know, you've got to get your team co-located and you've got to get that high performance going before you think about spreading them out again. Obviously, tools are going to be absolutely essential to make that a success. You know, without the transparency and the ability to easily communicate, you've got no chance as soon as you put to any distribution. There's going to be cost of travel, but more equal, you know, that's relatively easy to budget, hopefully. But more important are some of the points down the bottom here. You've got to keep the sites equal. There's no big brains onshore and little brains offshore. Okay? Everybody's got to have equal opportunity to drive success for this project. Everybody's got to feel like an equal citizen within what's going on. And you will find better results if you let those distributed teams take some responsibility. And with transparency, what's the fear? We can trust them. We can see everything that's happening on a regular basis. And there will be some overhead and taxes involved in role duplication, because if you want to make sure you've got alignment, you'll need people doing that at both ends. I will move on from that one, because I think some of the transformation stuff is pretty important to remember as well. I'm going to come back to the cargo cult challenge that we suffer. I don't know how many of you here have heard somebody say, we're agile, we get together for 15 minutes every day. Yeah, okay, all right, that's interesting. There is a lot of culture where people think it's simplistic, too simplistic. You know, just turning up and going through the motions mean you're suddenly agile and delivering better results. No, not necessarily at all. But a lot of the challenges can be around getting people to understand that practices need to relate to the culture of the organization. You need to be able to make sure that if you are having the notion of whole teams, that people are ready and willing to work and collaborate closely together. Transparency can be a big issue for people. In the story here of, you know, you've got a year to hide all your activities, and you can kind of make it up as you go along, and maybe it'll all come together in the end. If your transparency is so high that every individual is exposed everything they're doing every day, and every day they have to be seen to making some progress, some people find that a little pressured. That can be quite high pressure, and you do need to manage some of that in your teams. Rewards and recognition. A lot of large organizations have fantastic and highly effective, and people really love them, performance review processes. Yeah, how many people here really enjoy their performance review processes, really? Particularly if you're a manager and you've got to do it so many times. But we're always focused on the individual. How well did you do? You're going to have to change that. How well did you do in a team? And was your team successful? Are the teams you're in always successful? That can be quite a big challenge. The bottom one in there, sorry, is a bit of a common joke, panda. Poor and non-disciplined agile. I have another presentation called Hunting Panda to Extinction. Some people find it a little offensive, but it's about the dangerous beasts that panda can be, and it's not all very black and white about what's going on. Sorry, enough puns, moving on. So culture change, that's a bit of fun. I do turn up normally in a hunting helmet and things. So culture change has got to be at all levels, from the individual up to your whole community. And I think a very important point I'll bring out here, community. You've got to foster communities. Okay, so whilst we want everybody to be generalizing specialists, we also want them to know to do individual things well as well. You know, it's not an excuse to go, I can do a bit of everything but nothing well. You want everybody to have at least some things they do really well. And so it's great to have communities to make sure that's a success. And coming back to communities, obviously, too. I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to come back to this, I'm going to go past this very quickly, that the disciplined agile delivery set of knowledge is becoming a decision process framework. And this is just an example of, if you're trying to coordinate activities, they give you these decision trees, and within there it allows you to start making some choices about what practices will work best for you. In these decision trees, you can see that some of these items are bold and italic, and they're trying to say that's where you need to aim for. But the other things are there. They might not be the perfect way of helping you support agility, but making sure that you make a specific conscious decision about what you're choosing to do is very important. Again, the link, disciplinedagiledelivery.com. And there's a lot of great content in there about how you can choose specific practices to enable you to align to your enterprise. I'm moving along now quickly because I want to get to the community stuff at the end. Obviously, tooling is incredibly important. If you've not got the tools that support the way you're working, if you don't have the tools to expose the transparency, build trust and confidence, allow people to communicate and collaborate, your chances of success are far diminished, particularly as you scale, because not everybody can talk to everybody when you scale. The 6 and plus minus 3, 6 plus or minus 3, 7 plus or minus 2, is all about making sure you've got the opportunity for communication, collaboration. You get any scale complexity, the tools are going to be absolutely essential, and the tools will need to support those skills that we know people need to have too. How do you get the change in your organization? Last piece here. I mentioned cargo cults. I don't know if anybody recognizes these pictures up on the screen here. These islanders, very remote islanders, have built runways and wooden aeroplanes on their islands because they associate that with what supposedly will bring good results. These pictures are taken around the time, just after the end of the Second World War, when all these big nations went out around the world and took with them what they felt were really luxuries, you know, chocolate, alcohol, technology, etc. And the islanders kind of confused the cause and effect to this. They associated all these great things with the fact they saw aeroplanes, and when aeroplanes were around, these good things happened. What we're trying to say here is that the fact you do those 15-minute stand-ups, and the fact that you do kind of time box your list of things to do, and the fact that you try to prioritize lots of features to be done, doesn't mean you're going to necessarily get all the results of Agile that you're looking for. There is so much more to it than that. So having got somebody who's had the 2-day Scrum Master training, now running and driving your multi-million euro project is not necessarily an advisable technique. I think it's Scott's favorite quote to say that you get more education to be a barista at Starbucks than you do to become a Scrum Master. But we let the Scrum Master run a €1 million project. Okay, fine. Interesting choice. Yeah, you've got to get people who've been there, that have done this, and have actually been through the process, because there's so much more than the ceremonies. It is definitely about all the cultural stuff we've discussed. So we want all this stuff on the left, but it will require a huge amount of investment. The people change is going to be big. The business engagement is absolutely key. The business has to take the opportunity. It's an opportunity, but only one if they're willing to participate to get the results. It's one thing to say, here is all my requirements, be agile, and I'll expect great results later. It's another to say, this is what I'm looking to try and achieve with my organization. I think we're going to need some technology to do this. Can I work with you to get that result? Bit of a different result of value there, I think. You will need to make this process decisions along the way, and solutions like disciplined agile delivery will really help you. And if you're going to do anything with agile, make sure you measure the improvement. It's easy to say everything feels better, but it's certainly better if you can actually quantify some of that. And there are some great tools out there that can help you with that empiricism around your measurement. Collaboration tools, of course, but make sure you get some experience support. I would say that being a coach and mentor, wouldn't I? But make sure you get some support around it, because your just 2-day certifications are not going to be enough. There's a lot better recognition for good people out there. I'm not going to be taking questions in this session. Happy to discuss any of this, or even the next talk I'm doing from 11:30 in this room a bit later on. And also, I'll be around wearing the blue shirt out there somewhere for most of the day, so please feel free. One piece that I met Leif in Orlando this year because I was standing at the Global Rational User Community pedestal. And another one of my unofficial roles is to be one of the leaders of that global community. And what we're trying to do is give people the opportunity as users to collaborate, communicate, share, and learn from each other what really makes their use of their rational investment a success. So we have this, there is a website I'm going to come to in a moment. It's a global organization. We have territory groups, and we also have virtual groups. We have a global community too, where it's completely open, that allow people to work together and share knowledge. The website's completely key, as it says, rational-ug.org. That's where you sign up. You can sign up to be part of the global group, but also, being here in Stockholm, I'd be really keen for us to make sure we re-establish and reinvigorate a Swedish community as well. That's one of my goals from being here this week, is to try and make sure we get that started. And I know that's something that we're very keen to support and make sure happens. So also, I'm very keen to discuss this too. What you get up on that website is a huge collection of valuable knowledge, webcasts, presentations, and most of the time these are from real users, not from the IBM guys who are trying to tell you exactly how beautiful their product is. Beautiful that it is, of course, sorry. But also, kind of, when you get this problem, how do you address it and how do you get best value? So lots of excellent webcasts and presentations, huge amount of content. There's lots of forums, opportunities to find lead people. Most of the IBM champions are involved with this as well. So we're all kind of recognized as thought leaders, and we're happy to ask and support people in the communities. We also want to make sure that people can give us feedback on what else they want to know. So if your community, your local area needs a presentation, it needs a topic, it would love to be able to get one of those thought leads to do a webcast specifically for them, but then of course can be reused internationally as well, then that's the kind of thing that our community can provide. There's a lot of connections out, and we syndicate a lot of blogs as well, to be able to just hopefully be a portal for everything rational. There's also another aspect that may be of interest, and something we've set up and started establishing recently, is corporate user groups. Not everybody's keen on airing their dirty laundry to the worldwide audience. So maybe it'd be better if you've got an organization that's, even if it's local or geographically spread, you can have your own private domain within the global user groups environment, where you can have this service that is a free service. It's a managed service that effectively allows you to bring your people within your organization with an interest in rational, another way of being able to collaborate and learn from each other about what rational really means for you. A great way, if you're the person leading the adoption of rational solutions into your organization, I suggest this could be a really excellent way of being able to get some common communication, leverage a whole load of other resources out there, and also get something done for you for free. Now, there's this management team who will be really interested in making sure that your corporate group's a success, and they won't be charging you anything for it either. So why not reach out? And I've got some contact information in a moment. But there's all of these options coming up out there. So what, if you're interested in making good use from the rational user communities, what would I be asking you to do? Well, go to the rational-ug.org website and just sign up. That means then you're a member of the global community. Nobody's going to chase you, nobody's going to harass you, nobody's going to ring you up out of the blue and say, are you doing whatever, are you using, etc. It's about you investing to get results back. Then, of course, join some groups. Obviously, Sweden, we're considering right now, would be one to join. And with that, I'm going to be helping to make sure that there are some events specifically targeted at the Sweden community as well. But also you consider some virtual groups. So there is an Agile, a methods and practices virtual group, which I help coordinate webcasts for and actually get some engagement to that community. Maybe that would be of interest to you. But there are ones around certain tool sets, certain different scenarios. There's even kind of a DevOps related one as well, which is we're trying to bring into the Agile space too. There's a lot of content out there. Have a good scan for it. If you can't find things, the support team will help you. There's also an opportunity to contribute. Why not? Now, it's good to try and tell people your story about what you've achieved, or even tell a story about what you've achieved and what the challenges you still have, because people will always look to try and support. And volunteer. One aspect of volunteering may be that your organization would like to bring lots of knowledge in for free to share with your employees. So an opportunity there is you volunteer a space, maybe one evening, where people can gather. The community will bring in some speakers, some knowledge, lots of people interested in that topic. They'll be in your office, in your environment, and effectively you get free training and consulting and knowledge from all those people in your office, and your people can attend, and then effectively you've done something for the community, but also got lots out of it too. Doesn't take much, a space, maybe a bit of tea and coffee, maybe even some biscuits and cookies if you're really generous. But maybe even. And another trick is find a rational sales guy and make him come along as well, and make them buy beers afterwards. Okay, that's a good one. So did I say that out loud? Yeah. Okay. So that works for me in the UK. It's fantastic. I get the marketing lead in he buys. So volunteer to take on free beer. Okay, that's the idea. So, as I say, next steps, get into the site, join the Swedish community site, consider setting up something for you and your organization. I would say both is good. Don't completely isolate yourself. In a good Agile style, be transparent. It'll be amazing what feedback you'll get if you give people the opportunity to give you feedback, and may stop you doing something that they know doesn't work. And if you really want to, because I will be here today, I'm happy to talk about these things too, and my experiences of not only running the UK group, being part of the global community, and some of the things I've found that have or have not worked in being part of regional communities. Final request is, I'd love to find a non-IBM leader for our local community as well. So anybody's even thinking about possibly putting their hand up, maybe with a friend, to pair on that, to do it together, then I'd be happy to take you through what kind of commitment it would take. It's not a lot, but there's a lot of great rewards come out from that, particularly if you have an interest in having a great network of rational associated people in your local area. It can be a great way for you to get to meet lots of people. So if you want to learn more about that, then come and have a chat with me about it too. I've got to the end a couple of minutes early, but I recognise I'm between you and more coffee and food. So I'm not going to take questions at this point, but thank you very much for being an attentive audience, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.